Keep going.
It worked now? Okay. Thank you. Salãmun Alaykum. Inshallah, today we're gonna from so we're gonna read Seer. God alone worthy of worship. Do you not realize that God merges the night into the day and merges the day into the night, and that He has committed the sun and the moon in your service, each running in its orbit for a specific lifespan, and that God is fully cognizant of everything you do? This proves that God is the truth, while any idol they set up beside Him is falsehood, and that God is the Most High, Most Great. Do you not see that the ships surround the sea, carrying God's provisions, to show you some of His proofs? Indeed, this should be sufficient proofs for everyone who is steadfast, appreciative. When violent waves surrounds them, they implore God, sincerely devoting their prayers to Him alone. But as soon as He saves them to the shore, some of them revert. None discards our revelations except those who are betrayers, unappreciative. O people, you should reverence your Lord and fear a day when a father cannot help his own child, nor a child can help his father. Certainly, God's promise is truth. Therefore, do not be distracted by this life. Do not be distracted from God by mere religions, things we may and may not know. With God, is the knowledge regarding the hour and of the world. He is the one who sent down the rain, and he knows the contents of the womb. No soul knows what will happen to it tomorrow, and no one knows in which land he or she will die. God is omniscient, cognizant. Footnote says, God reveals his knowledge whenever he wills. We learn from this verse that we may be able to predict the reign and the gender of the fetus, but we cannot never know the time or place of death. In accordance with 72:27, God has revealed the end of the world through his messenger of the covenant. See 1587, 2015 and Appendix 25 for the details. Inshallah. Okay. We will go back to verse 21. Following the parents blindly, a common tragedy. When they are told, follow these revelations of God, they say, no, we follow only what we found our parents doing. What if the devil is leading them to the agony of hell? In this verse, we see that following the parents blindly is a common tragedy, of course, and every generation, as we know, refuse the new evidences of God and accept blindly what they found their parents without studying it. If we see here, we can ask questions. Why every generation do that, following their parents blindly without questioning, without studying? Why? They are thinking that this past generation are better than them, for example, or they have better mind, or no, of course not. We have the same brain, we have to use it too. Like God says in 17:36, God advises us, and he says, you shall not accept any information unless you verify it for yourself. I have given you the hearing, the eyesight, and the brain, and you are responsible for using them. It's clear here that God advised us to use our brain and verify every information that we found our parents do. Also, we see from the verse that the devil found this way very useful and easy way to lead people to hell, by following, idol worship, of course. So that's why we have to save our souls from hell by breaking the chain and examining everything we find. Because every generation is responsible for their works. Past generation is responsible for their works, and our generation also are responsible for their works too. We see that in 2:134. God says, such is community from the past. They are responsible for what they earned, and you are responsible for what you earned. You are not answerable for anything they have done. Yeah. Inshallah, now verse 22. The strongest band, those who submit completely to God while leading a righteous life, have gotten hold of the strongest band, for God is in full control of all things. As we notice here, God says those who submit completely, not just submit, but The word completely make a very big difference. If we want to know what that means completely, we can see that an example of complete and absolute submission to God in 162. God says, "Say, my contact prayers, salat, my worship practices, my life and my death are all devoted absolutely to God alone, the Lord of the universe. I have gotten hold of the strongest band, is the band of God, of course, sorry, is the strongest band. Why? Why God, describe this by strongest band? The answer is just after that. He says, for God is in full control of all things. So this is the reason. By knowing that God, the King of the universe, who have the control of all things in heaven and the earth, and this, God is in your side, by submitting completely to Him alone, you feel that it's not just feeling, it's God is in your side, so you will feel strong, you will feel secure, mean that you have gotten hold of the strongest band. So if you are not with God, no matter how great your power will never help you at all. And we see an example here in verse 8:19. God says, "Your armies will never help you, no matter how great, for God is on the side of the believers." Okay. Now, verse 23. As for those who disbelieve, do not be saddened by their disbelief. To us is their ultimate return, then we will inform them of everything they had done. God is fully aware of the innermost thoughts. In this verse, God tried to remind the Prophet Muhammad, do not be sad by the disbelief or of the disbelievers. And he gave him here the reason why he should not be sad, because he says to us is their ultimate return, because one day all of them will be returned to God and get paid for everything they have done. This is the simple reason to not be sad, and also, let's not be sad, not feel sorry too. We don't have to be sorry for these believers too, because feeling sorry, it's like objecting God's system. God is very just, and we see that in 8:51, God says, "This is the consequences of what your hands have sent forth. God never unjust towards the creatures." 24. We let them enjoy temporarily, then commit them to severe retribution. Here, God says, we let them enjoy temporarily. He was talking about the disbelievers. So we have to ask questions, why? Why he let them enjoy temporarily? They are disbelievers. Here the answer is because God have a system which is the complete freedom of disbelief or belief. He gives us the freedom, and in 42:20, God says, "Whoever seeks the rewards of the hereafter, we multiply the rewards for him, and Whoever seeks the material of this world, we give him from, then he receives no share in the hereafter. So it's clear here. So as we read here, God gives the disbelievers complete freedom, and once they choose to disbelieve and seek the enjoyment of this world, God gives them it and let them enjoy temporarily, then commit them to severe retribution. So by choosing that, we can find out that the disbelievers or idol worshippers are really not very intelligent, because this life is nothing compared to hereafter. Verse 25. They believe in God. If you ask them, who created the heavens and the earth, they will say, God. Say, praise be to God. Yet most of them do not know. Here, God talk about the people who says, that they believe in God. They just say, and he mentioned that most of them actually do not know. So we found out here that there is difference between saying and knowing. Believing in God need to know God, not just by lip service. We have to know his qualities and everything, and reflect on it, and we have to make sure, that's why we have to make sure that our belief based on knowing God, not just lip service. And this is very important, and we can see some of his qualities in the next verse here, in verse 26. God says, to God belongs everything in the heavens and the earth. God is the most rich, most praiseworthy. So as we see here, God gives some of his qualities that we should know if we really believe in God, not just lip service. That to God belongs everything in the heavens and the earth, the most rich, most praiseworthy. So one person believe in God, really by knowing his qualities, believing that he's doing everything, he's in control of everything, he's the king of the universe. Certainly this person will never set any idol beside God. He will hold to the strongest band of God, as we saw, and never set any idol or seek any help from any other sources, beside God, because he know God as most rich king of the universe, the one who controls all things. That's why the believers who just believe with lip service, that's saying just we believe in God but not knowing really God, they can easily fall in idol worship, as we know from the Quran that most of the believers are destined for hell. So we have to make sure that we are believers by knowing God. Verse 27. These are all the words we need. If all the trees on the earth were made into pens, and the ocean supplied the ink, augmented by 7 more oceans, the words of God would not run out. God is almighty, most wise. We know that the greatness of God is not compared by, of course, but by any human being on earth. God is very great, most great, subhanAllah. And as well as his words too, the words of God are very great, not compared by, the word of human being. And that's why I think God trying here to give us, it's like an allegorical description of his words, that his words, illimitness of his words, because of we can't stand the greatness of God. Of course we can't stand the greatness of God because we are created very weak, and it's as well as the greatness of his words too. His words is very great, so we can stand it too as a human being. That's why God, the most wise, give us all the words that we need in a book, which is the Quran, so we can save our souls. And that's why the subtitle here said they are all the words we need. All we need from our salvation is Quran. Praise be to God. It's very fully detailed, and plus of that, mathematically coded. Masha Allah, thank God. Now, verse 28. The creation and resurrection of all of you is the same as that of one person. God is here, seer. Of course, as we know, God creates the human beings in the same way. He initiated us from the earth, then as embryos in our mother's bellies, as we see in verse 50, Surah 53, verse 32. He says, He has been fully aware of you since he initiated you from the earth, and while you were embryos in your mother's bellies. Therefore, do not exalt yourself. He is fully aware of the righteous. This is for the creation. God described here the way he created us. It's the same way from earth and then in our mother's bellies. And for the resurrection, the same thing. God gave us an idea about the way we will be resurrected. Inshallah, in many verses in Quran, and we'll choose one verses here in 101, Surah 101, verse 4. God says, that is the day when people come out like swarm of butterflies. God gave us an idea of the way he will resurrect us, inshallah. 29. God alone worthy of worship. Do you not realize that God merges the night into the day and merges the day into the night, and that he has committed the sun and the moon in your service, each running in its orbit of a specific lifespan, and that God is fully cognizant of everything you do? This is a question. Here, God invites us to reflect on some phenomenon that we see every day, like day and night. How God merges the night into the day and the day into the night, which means, exactly, I think, the sunset and the sunrise, and when we reflect on that, we can see how God merges the night and the day, in a very beautiful way, gradually and gently, and can see how the sky changes its colors very nicely every moment, and giving us beautiful pictures, subhanallah. Very nice way and perfectly designed, subhanallah. And all of that happened very, very nicely, we don't even feel it, subhanallah. And imagine that there is no merges and between day and night, and imagine that, for example, the night can suddenly, like for example, turning the light on or off. It will be very scary, but thank God he make this happen very nicely, it's a mercy from God, subhanallah. And also another thing, it's when the earth revolves, human being don't feel it at all, and there is, for example, no sounds, no nausea, for example, something like that. Subhanallah, this is mercy from God. So who can do that? We have to reflect on that. Who will design this perfect design? Who in control of that? Of course, nobody have the power to do that. SubhanAllah, God, the most merciful. That's why He alone is worthy of worship. And this is, of course, proofs from God. And He mentioned that in the next verses, as we will see now, inshallah, verse 30. He says, "This proves that God is the truth, while any idol they set up beside him is falsehood, and that God is the Most High, most great." So, all the idols that people set up beside God really cannot do anything of that, of course, like dying day and night, controlling the sun or the moon, for example. No one can do that, of course. That's a clear proof, for people to reflect on it. And it's, if they really reflect, it's very simple and clear. If they reflect and use their mind, they will recognize, exactly that God, the Most High, most great, is the truth, and everything else is just falsehood. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Okay. 31. Do you not see that the ships roam the sea, carrying God's provisions, to show you some of His proofs? Indeed, this should be sufficient proofs for everyone who is steadfast, appreciative. In this verse, God gave us more proofs, As we see the last verse, God invites us to reflect on space, for example, the sun, the moon, etc. But in this verse, He wants us to reflect on more proofs on earth, and specifically here the sea, and the ships roam the sea, exactly, yeah. So we have to ask the question, for example, when we see the ships floating in an ocean, how can the ships float over these deep oceans, for example, without sinking? Yeah, this is a very simple question that we have to reflect, and it will give us more proofs. So for this case, for example, with science, we know that there is a physical law that states that if the ship's weighs less than the maximum volume of water, it floods. This is a simple physical law that God put, Masha Allah, and thank God. So who controls this law? Is God. It's God, for sure. He put this physical law to allow the ships roam the sea. Alhamdulillah, but we have to ask the question why he put these things like that. We find the answer exactly after, in order to carry God's provisions. This is the answer. And as we see in 596, all creatures of the sea lawful to eat. So indeed this should be sufficient proofs, for who? For everyone who is steadfast, appreciative, And we notice here that God choose to describe the people who, take heed from that, steadfast. They are steadfast. I think because the people who continue to reflect in every occasion, they are people very steadfast, because it needs steadfastness to reflect continuously, every chance we get on his creation. Inshallah. Okay. Verse 32. When violent waves surround them, they implore God, sincerely devoting their prayers to him alone. But as soon as he saves them to the shore, some of them revert. None discards our revelations except those who are betrayers and appreciative. Here in this verse, we see that God described people who worship God conditionally. So when adversity, for example, come their way, they implore God, devoting their prayers to him alone. And as we know that we are born into this world with the natural instinct that God alone as our Lord and Master. And most of the time when people get in very hard situation, this natural instinct show up, and because every human being is born with knowledge about God, as we see in 172. But as soon as he saves them, he says that they revert and discard his revelation. That's why God calls such people betrayers, unappreciative betrayers. They betray, the covenant with God, because they have already the knowledge that God is their God. So in any situation, any hardship, they return to God, but as soon as they saved them, they became betrayers and appreciative. Okay. Verse 33. Sorry. O people, you should reverence your Lord and fear a day when a father cannot help his own child, nor a child can help his father. Certainly, God's promise is truth. Therefore, do not be distracted by this life. Do not be distracted by God by mere illusions. It's clear here that on the day of resurrection, people cannot help each other at all. There will be no relationships between people. Even the strongest relationship between, for example, the father and his own child will not help at all. And we have examples, from messengers that for example, we have two examples here. The Prophet Abraham couldn't help his father, and also Prophet Noah couldn't help his son. That's why, we have to be prepared for this day and try to protect our souls, ourselves, and our families from hellfire as much as we can. And like Luqman too, in this Surah 31, it's Luqman. And in the beginning of this surah, we see that Luqman tried to advise his son. He tried to help him, to save him, before the day come when no relationship will help at all. Yeah. And we have to not be distracted, of course, from God by this life. Thank you. Last verse. Things we may and may not know. With God is the knowledge regarding the hour and of the war. He's the one who sends down the rain, and he knows the contents of the wood. No soul knows what will happen to it tomorrow, and no one knows in which land he or she will die. God is omniscient, cognizant. And I'm gonna read the footnotes of this verse, inshallah. God reveals his knowledge whenever he wills. We learn from this verse that we may be able to predict the rain and the gender of the fetus, but we can never know the time or place of death. In accordance with 72:27, God has revealed the end of the world through his messenger of the covenant. See 1587, 2015, and Appendix 25 for the details. As we see in the footnotes, God's messenger of the covenant gave examples about things that we may know, like the rain, the gender of the fetus, and on the other hand, the things that we cannot know, like the time or place of death, of course. But for the end of the world, God have revealed to his messenger of the covenant its time. And if you want more details, you can go, inshallah, to Appendix 25 for more details about this, about the end of the world, inshallah. And I want to read, some verses related to this topic. 72:26. God says, he is the knower of the future. He does not reveal the future to anyone, only to a messenger that he chooses, that he revealed from the past and the future specific news. This is to ascertain that they have delivered their Lord's messages. He is fully aware of that, of what they have. He has counted the numbers of all things. Okay, inshallah, I'm gonna stop here, and if anyone have question or a comment, inshallah, you can. Thank you for listening.
Masha Allah, Huda, you did a very good job.
Oh, thank you, Sister Pamela.
Yeah, Masha Allah, sister, very good job explaining the verses.
Thank you, brother.
Masha Allah, thank you.
So I just have a question, or more like clarification. The verse where you say that do not be saddened by their disbelief. I forgot which verse was that. I mean, I just want to, you mentioned that Prophet Muhammad, God is talking, let me know that this Quran is for everybody. And a lot of people that, if you open the regular Quran, they mention Prophet's name on verses that giving people that God is talking to Prophet Muhammad, and in fact, God is talking to every one of us because this is for the mankind, and that like if we tell somebody that or somebody is disbelieving in the community, that we should not be saddened by their disbelief or feel sorry for them. Just want to clarify, is that right?
Yeah, then that's how I understood it too.
Yeah. And I just saw this verse today. I mean, you read it, but it doesn't. A lot of time, you do feel sad for a lot of people, your friends, your blood relatives, and in general in community. I see a lot of people there like end of their life, and they're crying and sad, and you start to feel sorry or feel sad for them. But this is God is saying that do not be sad. This is God's system. If someone is deserving to go to hell, this is what it is. I mean, if somebody just commits a major crime and the punishment is like, they life in prison or whatever punishment is, because they deserve it. Would you feel sorry for the judgment comes from the judge that, okay, send this person to prison for the rest of their life? Would you feel sorry for it because this person deserves it? So anybody who goes to hell, I guess they deserve it, and we should not be feeling sorry for them. MashaAllah, thank you.
So I wanted to comment on verse 27. God is reminding us absolutely that, the Quran is everything we truly need. I mean, if God wanted to, tell us more things, if there were other things that we needed to do for our salvation, He would have certainly put them in the Quran, because God says that the Quran is complete, perfect, and fully detailed. And yet we see, people coming up with, other laws and other dogmas that they follow, while acknowledging these verses that are in the Quran. They read the Quran, they read these verses, and yet they still follow, all those other laws that are put together by their idols, as opposed to the laws that God has put in the Quran. I mean, we come across these people every day. This is very clear that, I mean, if you think about all the trees on Earth being pens, and the oceans, I mean, imagine how much water that is, how much ink that would be. So God could, write books and, loads of literature for us that would never end. I mean, we would continue to learn new things forever, but all we need is here, and this is God's greatness, that He has put everything in this one book. But the key to His guidance, comes from Him. While this book is, this book weighs so strong in terms of its guidance, and it has all the guidance that we need. I mean, it's only accessible by those who truly believe in it, and those who truly follow it. As God says, none can grasp it except the sincere. So as a result, they're not able to understand these very basic principles that God has put in place. That the Quran is complete, perfect, and fully detailed, and it should be our only source, for our salvation. Yet we see, millions of people going to hell for that very reason, because the Quran is not enough for them, and they believe that they have to look for other laws and sources besides the Quran for their guidance. I mean, the other day, I was in this debate online with this group of people, that I posted I posted a video about circumcision, and then I got some comments and responses by some certain traditional Muslims, and one of them was quoting the Torah, and it was quite interesting. They were quoting verses from the Torah, saying that we have to get circumcised and this and that. But we know that this book is all we need. So if we truly believe the Quran is all we need, I mean, why do you even think that you need to go and look at other sources besides Quran to find out what you need to do? God tells us that Quran should be our only source, and this is mentioned in Surah 6, verse 114. It says, Quran fully detailed. Shall I seek other than God as a source of law, when He has revealed to you this book fully detailed? Those who receive the scripture recognize that it has been revealed from your Lord truthfully. You shall not harbor any doubt. And then the footnote says, upholding any source besides the Quran reflects disbelief in the Quran. And then, of course, we have the entire Appendix 18 written by God's Messenger of the Covenant to demonstrate that very fact, that it is in fact the only thing we need for our salvation. So I mean, I know this is something that we read about every day, but I think it's good to emphasize on this as much as possible, so our generation and our future generations don't fall prey to the same tricks that people in the past have fallen to, or people at present, even people who identify themselves as submitters, as have also unfortunately gone astray in that manner, where they believe in, they say they believe in God alone and Quran alone, but then they uphold things like circumcision and God knows other laws that they have made up. And so this is just nothing but a trap from Satan for those people who truly do not believe that it is perfect. Of course, we have to be tested. You cannot just offer lip service. Of course, our inner convictions are tested by in this perfect design that perfect test that God has designed. So we just have to remember that if somebody tells us something about God, or says, God says this, or God commands us to do that, it doesn't matter who this person is. This person could be, the holiest person that we know in our eyes, for example, the nicest person on earth, or he could be the closest person to God's messenger of the covenant. But if what he's saying or she's saying, and you don't find it in the Quran, you don't accept it. This is the same principle we see the messenger of the covenant preached also. If you watch the last conference, exactly the same words he used to remind people, as in the strongest words, that in the strongest terms, that if anybody comes in, Satan will try to divert you, and people will try to divert you by telling you things that are not in the Quran. And so our principle is that if something's not in the Quran, it may or may not be correct, but if it's not in the Quran, we don't care for it, we don't follow it, we don't believe it. And so people tend to take this very lightly and fall for other things. But as submitters, we are clear that this is the only book that we need for our salvation, and this is the only book that we follow. And if it's not in the Quran, we have no regard for it. That's it.
Masha Allah, Salman, good point.
Yeah, Masha Allah.
Salman, Assalamu Alaykum.
Well,
Sorry, where is that footnote for? You just said that verse about upholding any other source other than Quran.
Surah 6, 114.
6:1. Oh, okay. 6:114. Yeah, the famous one. All right. Thank you so much.
yeah, so man, it seems Surah 114 around the same area where people have made innovations about animals, marking the animals, and this bull, if they have that many fathers, cannot eat. And so this is human tendency to create innovations lead by Satan. And this is the tragedy of our time. They're marking male child to such a tragic, this is a tragedy, if one can understand that. What a horrible tragedy to created this innovation, and knowing with all the scientific facts, still pushing this ideology to the limit is just beyond. We have so much sources online that it clearly proves this is really, really, bad for us, for male. And even if you think, somebody thinks, oh, I am in that age, I won't have a child or this and that, but don't think that. Even if you're not going to have children, or if it's it depends what you think. If you believe in God alone, and you uphold the Quran alone, and who even knows that the other books have been changed so much, the Bible and other books. I mean, everybody, you can pick up so many different versions, and how are you going to prove it or anything like that? But for us, in any sense, all the previous scriptures, this is the final testament, and this is the message that we're supposed to uphold. Mashallah. Thank you.
Inshallah, yeah, you're right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is that, for someone who is able to see, God has put so many proofs about this, like you said, but the thing is, if you're not guided by God, I mean, all these proofs are useless for people. Like they will try to look for ways to justify their idolatry. Um, like there was this one person who was looking for words that with secondary or type of like hidden meanings, and he came to this conclusion by telling people, he's like, no, circumcision, the word of circumcision is mentioned in the Quran by some remote verse. I forgot what verse it was. I think it was about leaving something. So the Arabic word that was mentioned for that was kind of similar to a word that they used to describe circumcision somehow, and he made that remote connection, I think, and said, by and trying to tell people that the word the word is similar to circumcision that is mentioned in the Quran, so you can't say, so now circumcision is mentioned in the Quran, even though there's no mention of circumcision in Quran. So I was actually watching the video in defense of the Bible, and in fact, this is one of their very you know uh, big arguments that they use to tell you, look, though the messenger made the video about in defense of the Bible, but if you watch the video and he says 10% of it is nonsense, and when he talks about it in the video, he says that, believe me, he says there's so much nonsense in this in the scriptures that we don't have time to go through and talk about all of those things. There's so much nonsense. So when you know for a fact that there is so much nonsense, I mean, it's clear. But then people then trying to defend that by using laws in the previous scriptures that have been tampered with. I mean, this is really being unappreciative, because God has given us a scripture that is mathematically coded. He has sent us a messenger who has clarified all of this for us and given us the mathematical proofs of all of our practices. If submission was a practice of our religion, first and foremost, it would have been in the Quran. Second, the messenger of the covenant would have clarified it, when to do it, how to do it, all of that, as he did for all the other practices. Because there's so many versions of just the practice of circumcision. There's so many people doing it at so many different ages. There's so many different styles. Some people just do it to males, others do it to females as well. So obviously, if it was a practice, there would have been clarification needed, and then the mathematical proof, just like he gave mathematical proof for salat, zakat, fasting, and hajj. So so it really just comes down to the fact that when somebody doesn't believe that the Quran is enough and it's complete, perfect, and fully detailed, and they seek any other source besides the Quran as a source of law, that's it. It's a trap. They just fall into it. You could be the strong person, right? But you walk into that trap, you're gonna fall down. I mean, you're not gonna defy the laws of gravity. So it's a trap that Satan has put in place to trap people like us who are trying to worship God alone. Of course, he's looking for ways, right? So we have to be smart about it, and know our enemy and how he's gonna. But the thing is that no matter how many proofs, and we have seen that, right? That no matter how many proofs you give to these people, I mean, you can put the scripture in front of them and give them everything. But the thing is, once they fall in that trap, they're not able to see or hear anything. It's like talking to the dead or the deaf, like God says. So when they fall into it, then that's pretty much it, because they've made the decision to disbelieve.
Yeah, yes, Salman, that's a very good point. The problem, another thing, Paul, is that, okay, if you pick up Torah and you say, I'm going to follow this too, then you may be locking yourself to that scripture. Then God may uphold you on the day of resurrection. Okay, you pick up that part of the scripture, then you must have followed the whole thing. What about this and that? If you think that this is you have to follow this, then you have to do all of this. Same goes for people who follow hadith. Like if you see, okay, I believe in hadith, then okay, then you then follow the whole of it, and your life becomes so complicated that you can't even imagine. And you cannot then pick and choose. And God has given this a mercy from God, that God has given this scripture which is easy and understandable and follow. And I'm gonna end my with this verse from the Quran. It's verse 1746, and this is a very scary verse. If anybody want to ponder, God says that we place shields around their minds to prevent them from understanding it, and deafness in their ears. And when you preach your Lord using Quran alone, they run away in aversion. Masha Allah.
Exactly.
Yeah, because they have shields now. I mean, they can't even understand anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're talking to a wall, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, yeah, inshallah.
Also, one of the things I saw one of the things I observed is when you become a submitter and you especially belong to a community, sometimes the friendship, and Satan's using this against you in a way, the friendship and the friends that your children will have in that community, and sometimes even if you see that community has gone astray or is doing wrong, you do not choose to leave that community because you would lose all the beautiful friendship, the friends your children has built around. And a lot of time when people come to submission, they have given up their own family members. If you're traditional Muslim and you become a submitter, a lot of family members don't talk to you, or if you come from a different religion. So you lost a lot of family members, and now you've come to submission, and the community is all you feel like you have. And that I believe also is one of Satan's trap. Holding you in that community, and a lot of people, they would realize that, for example, this topic of circumcision is not in the Quran. However, the fact that they would not know how to leave that community because now they have nowhere or no one to go, that's what they feel, and they will not leave because of that. So this is one of Satan's trap too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is obviously that, I mean, those types of people, are not, thinking right, because, I mean, the thing is, these worldly friendships, they do idol worship to, the verse that says to preserve, some worldly friendship amongst themselves. So, thing is, we are going to be held accountable for our individual selves, and all the ties among people will be severed. God says on the day of judgment, the people who go to hell, they will disown one another and curse one another. And the thing is, we have to, we have to look at it in terms of the fact that either people are believers or hypocrites as far as God is concerned. There's people that are going to hell, there's people that are going to heaven. And if you're going to associate yourselves with people that are going to hell, I mean, the hypocrites will rub off on you. This is a system that God has created. If you force yourself to be with the believers, you're going to become a believer, and you're going to be reminded of God in different ways, and you're gonna be a believer. But if you're gonna be with befriend the hypocrites, ally yourselves with them, even just choose to hang out with them a lot, they will rub off on you. They'll start to put doubts in your mind, and then eventually you will start thinking like them too. I mean, if you allow your children to mingle with their children, eventually they will start to sympathize with them, and they'll start to understand their ideologies, and maybe they might get convinced by their ways too. If not, they'll do other things. You know, I mean, slowly, you know, it'll start to affect them. I mean, like, um I mean, I could give several allegories of that too, but I think it's kind of clear that this is God's system, and you know, that's why God says we have to run for our lives. And you know, so when you see these people, these are clearly hypocrites and idol worshippers, because following any other source besides the Quran is idol worship. So they're committing idol worship. They're not believers; they're hypocrites, because they're saying with their lips that they believe, but they don't believe that, and their minds are shielded, right? So we have to be smart and not go by the appearances, because we know the appearances can be deceiving, and people can appear to be very pious and very holy and godly in every way, but you know, we can tell from you know, the what they believe, that they're not on the right path. So I mean, you know, if we realize that the price that what we're paying for this kind of friendship is so expensive, you know, it's not even intelligent. So you know, I mean, one would run for their life. You know, if you if you have a friend who you know is gonna drag you to hell, I mean, then you should keep yourself away from that person for your own good. You know, if you truly believe.
Yeah, and I think what people, you know, in that situation fail to realize is, you know, grab onto God, the strongest bond, and at one point you will not be without that worldly friendship. God will provide something, an outlet for you. But I think people are so fearful of the isolation and the
Mm-hmm.
loss of friendship that they're not even seeing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and for social gathering, if you're, you know, if that's what's important to you, then that's what's important to you. God is not important to you. It just all comes down to that. And it comes to think of it, you know, we think that, oh, okay, then who I'm going to hang out with, or what I'm going to do, or this and that. I mean, we should be just focusing on God and devote ourselves to God, you know, God, because we can ultimately going to go back to God. And I was just thinking that the true submitters, the true believers of God are minority of the minority. That is true. But if you look at the big picture, actually the disbelievers are minority of the minority. When you zoom out and you look at the whole God's kingdom in the 7 universes and beyond, the angels and everything, you know, the 7.5 billion or whatever number, you know, they are minority, because God's kingdom has the creation alone on earth. All the animals and trees, and these are submitted to God. They are in trillions. All the insects, they are all submitted to God. So in that sense, the disbelievers are in severe minority. You want to be with the minority, or you want to be the majority? You choose. Thank you.
Inshallah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also, you know, quality is better than quantity. You know, I mean, it's better to have one true friend than have you know, 100 you know, fake friends. You know, I mean, you're never gonna be fulfilled if you are not following God's path. You know, and you're not gonna be truly happy. You know, you people do this to find happiness, right? And happiness only comes from following God's system and following God's laws. True happiness. You know, so we should just follow what God says with our eyes closed, and you know, God will take care of everything. Inshallah.
Yeah, the message of God explains that the true happiness is like, there's like, you know, there's the lava that comes out of the ground. Your heart will be pouring out with happiness that you can't even like comprehend. You know, and you just praise God and enjoy those happy blessings, Masha.
Inshallah. Yeah, because yeah, like you said, the strongest bond. You know, I mean, those who submit completely to God have gotten hold of the strongest bond. So, you want God's friendship over and above anything else. If you don't have anybody in this world as your friend, you could have no one. You could be the only person initially at some point, but God will take care of you eventually. As we see in the Quran about Abraham, like when he disowned his father, God granted him a beautiful kids who were righteous, and he rewarded him. So he took care of him. He will make sure that if your friends don't exist, real friends don't exist, they will be created for you from nothing. So God's power is immense, but we have to remember that God's friendship is what we are here to regain. His redemption. And so once we have His approval, it doesn't matter if we have nobody's approval. If God is happy with us, He's going to make sure that we're taken care of. So, and all our needs will be met, God willing.
Yeah, Masha Allah. Very good point. Yeah, that verse is so powerful. It says, submit completely. The word completely, how Sister Ada explains that this is, mashallah, it is just not submitting. You have to completely submit to, but then at that point, the hold between you and God becomes so, strong. And that is what we want, mashallah. And imagine if God is in your life, who would you think you would need? Even anybody else?
Exactly.
God,
yeah.
He's the Lord of the universe, the Almighty, the King of the King. He created everything. Everything that we look around, all the 7 universes. If he's happy with you, who else do you need anyway?
Yeah, exactly.
What's up? And the verse that says where the ship roams the earth. See, you not see the ships roam the sea carrying goods, God's provisions, to show you some of His proof. Indeed, these should be sufficient proof for everyone who steadfastly appreciated. Imagine this. There's so many physics that happens when the ship is carrying if the density of the water was very light, then everything will drown in it. Just like air density is so light that we are now floating on the top of the ozone layer. It's so thin that's why you're sitting on the ground. But the helium balloon has a less density, so it can float above. Similarly, if water did not have enough density, the metal ships and they will drown inside. So God made a certain amount of density for water. And with the ship, if you see the shape of the ship is like from the front, it looks like a V shape. And anything that V shape cannot stand straight. But you can see the ships, they stand in storms. They don't tip over. I mean, this is amazing. And this is where you can say, can that happen randomly by itself? I mean, someone designed it, Masha Allah.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about the other comment that Pamela made, about the friendships, and it's like, yeah, you let go of one group of idol worshippers and now you join another group. So what's the difference? You might as well stayed with the previous group, if you wanted company.
So sometimes I thought about it too, and I said, Satan comes up with all different traps, and in this case, in regarding circumcision, the trap was the people who still examine the Quran for years and years and still believe circumcision is part of our rites or part of our religion. Um, so it's like Satan. It's like they're good all the way, and people are like, yeah, they can't be wrong, right?
Yeah.
Because if everything they've choose the correct path, they stood on, they can't be wrong.
Yeah.
So people would say, oh, they can't be wrong, so they can't be wrong on this either. But that's
Yeah.
another Satan trap.
Yeah. I mean, that's always been Satan's way of trying to divert the people, right? Like he will he will find people of authority and a reputation, like if you look at it from any angle, like look at the Christian scholars, right? I mean, the the Satan goes all the way to the Pope. Why? Because people look up to the Pope and think that he has all the guidance, and he's so righteous, and he knows the scripture and the scholars, right? And so same thing for traditional Muslims. He goes for the people who are appear to be very knowledgeable and know the scripture back and forth and stuff, right? So he he is very smart. So he's not gonna go find people who are just completely ignorant. He's gonna go find people that he's worked on for years, like the Messenger of the Covenant talked about how Satan works on people from the very beginning, like from the very young age. Satan continues to work on these people. They go to the Al Azhar University. They study the religion for years and years, and they work on these people because they know that when these people graduate, and they reach a position where they'll be like, oh well, this person's a graduate of Al Azhar University, and nobody knows religion better than this person. So it's a prestigious to them. It's a very prestigious institution, and so he'll work on these people for ages, and then when this person speaks nonsense, nobody will say anything because this person is a graduate of Al Azhar and he knows the religion, right? And that's what they think. And this is so the same thing for people in submission. If he wants to change submission, I mean, he's gonna find people that have some sort of authority, some sort of influence on the submitters, and we know who these people are. So he's gonna find them, and and if he finds their weakness, which he does very easily by studying them, then he works on them and he traps them, and then whatever they say, people follow, right? Because they're like, oh well, this person's so pious, they know, uh, and that's the trap, right? Because and that's why the messenger says, whatever it is, no matter who it is that is telling you this, Satan's gonna be there to divert you, and he's gonna come from all angles. So no matter who it is telling you these things, don't believe it unless you find it in the Quran yourself. So I mean, we already have the recipe. We just have to follow it. But the thing is, people forget that. People forget the fact that it doesn't matter who is telling us these things. It's just we have to remember that God is the one who we need to follow, and we have to listen to God directly. We have the Quran with us. We have the guidance. We don't need to listen to this person or that person to tell us what our religion says. But Satan's tricks are exposed to us. We know what his tricks are, but if people don't pay attention to that, then they're gonna fall into it. If you follow another person besides God, like you follow X, Y, and Z because you're very knowledgeable, and then you're idolizing that person. You're not following God alone. You're not worshiping God alone, and that's what one of the footnotes says, that these religious leaders, they have idolized their religious leaders and scholars as lords besides God. They idolize them. They idolize them, and it's clear. I mean, we've seen that people idolize other submitters too. And they say things, whatever they say, they would follow. And if you say anything about those idols, they freak out.
Masha Allah, Salman. And another thing I wanted to just point out, you said, they'll talk nonsense, and it's nonsense to us. However, when they're saying it, they say it in the most eloquent of manner, and it's believed.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, many of them, they're soft talker, and they so sweetly talk to you, and then you're like, oh, they cannot be a liar.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, same like the people who fabricate hadith, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We see that happening very often. We talk to people, and then you know what the answer we get? Well, that's what we have seen. That's what all these religious people we taught. How can they be wrong? They spend their entire life studying the religion. Do you think they're wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And you come out here and you say you're right?
Yeah.
That's the exact Quranic word to say, and like, oh wow.
Yeah.
You know what it is, Adam? You didn't go to Al-Azhar.
There's one guy, Messenger of Covenant, was saying he went to Al-Azhar, but whose God opens the chest, they will come to the truth. Masha Allah.
Yeah, and he went astray after the messenger died too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So he went back.
Yeah. He went further astray, like.
Oh my God.
Point. Yeah.
Is it when Messenger of the Covenant died, he probably had too much pressure and then he went far astray?
No. They were just not real sincere believers, I mean, they obviously had other priorities, So I think Huda knows about this person more than me. I don't know, but I think it's called Huda. Do you know this person from Al Azhar University? I think it was.
Yeah, his name is Ahmed Subhi Mansour.
Yeah.
He's now a leader of Quranist, so-called Quranist. They following the Quran alone and they are astray. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a huge following, yeah.
Yeah, that's why we should be like always striving and not even leave a small spot unchecked to make sure, and try to devote ourselves to God as much as possible.
Yeah.
Masha Allah, not even a crack.
Yes. Don't leave a stone unturned.
And the test continues.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. If the people are maybe half as careful as they're careful about the coronavirus now, I think they should be in good shape.
And how they can do the social gathering anymore.
Yeah.
You guys not sitting together anymore? Why? Don't you love anymore? The traditional mosques, they're not doing the Jummahs together.
Yeah.
The whole of, they said for the first time in 1400 years, the Mecca has shut down.
Shut down, yeah.
No prayer. Yeah, 1400 years. Can you imagine?
Wow. Yeah, I was looking at some numbers too, There was a lot of numbers that I saw. They were mathematically coded, and one of them I saw was on Facebook, and I see that it's a multiple of 19, like in many ways. Let me show you. So there is if you look at the first case that was reported on December 31st, right? December 31st, 2019. So if you look at December 31st, 31/12/2019, you put it side by side, that is a multiple of 19, right? But that whole number itself, if you add the digits, it adds up to be 19 as well. But then also that I said it's a multiple of 19, right? So that number that it's a multiple of, if you take its digits and you add them up, they also add up to be 19. And also, the first death was reported on what is it? 11th of January. So if you put 11 01 2020, that's also a multiple of 19. And so I mean, there's quite a lot of signs, mathematical signs around it. Like it's hard to ignore, you know. But yeah, it's quite amazing. And all people are waiting for are those, those N95 masks. 95 is also a multiple of 19. I mean, there's
Oh
many.
my God.
Yeah, there's many different numbers. I mean, they could. There's higher numbers than 95 for those masks. They're
Right.
even stronger masks, but they're just searching for N95 ones.
Yeah, it's kind of sign from God.
Hmm.
Well, Surah 74 says clearly it's a warning to the human race. So this is the first time an actual warning in the shape of 19 has come. Everywhere it's being. And people are searching number 19 online and everything. That there has never been like this kind of number has been associated, number 19 associated with anything else before. So this is a warning for something bigger to come, actually. This is a pinch. This is a pinch. The next, my personal thinking is, the next is going to be smoke. Because that is the worst event. Then there's no cure for virus or anything. Then people will actually, that is the affliction for real. That's the retribution. Before retribution, warning comes. This is just like to us. We get a pinch. This is a pinch to the world before the other event, which is smoke. That means it's not too far from now. I mean, look at 2019. Was very significant year. So much bad happened. The fire in Australia, the fire in Amazon jungle. The Amazon is the green roof of the world, right? So that was destroyed immensely. And then Australian fire. Besides many other disasters, I think California had significant fires and all that. And then nobody taking heed. And I don't think people are going to learn from this experience as well. This one is once they will be healed, they're going to forget about it. If whenever that cure is coming or vaccine coming. But this is the biggest pinch the world has ever received before smoke, because nobody can do anything about smoke once that happens. That's retribution.
Yeah, there are more and more reason that we should hold God's ropes more and more strongly, because if disaster hits, those who steadfastly persevere to God will take them out very nicely, just like with Lot, yeah. In his family and his wife was left behind. So, I mean, there's no other refuge other than God. I mean, you cannot say I live in this area or I can move. Imagine when this thing was going in China and people were happy, they were getting on the plane. Oh, I'm out of here. Now where are you gonna go? I mean, it's everywhere. Only God's refuge is the refuge. We have to seek Him, because no matter what happens, He will take you out in any disaster, Masha Allah.
Yeah, that's right.
And the verse, that 27,
Sorry, I think we lost you, Adam.
okay, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
So verse 27 and verse 109 from Surah 18, which is a similar verse with the oceans. So if you add 109 and 27, and they add up to be each number 7 plus 2 plus 9 plus 1, and they add up to be 19 also, inshallah.
Oh. Can you say it one more time?
You know the verse, Surah 18, 109. It's
Okay.
about also oceans and God's word.
Okay.
And there's verse 27. If you add them up, 109 plus 27, like 1 plus 9 plus 2 plus 7, they are both, these are the only two verses where God is talking about that. And when you add them, they're 19, mashallah. Yeah, just the verse numbers.
Mashallah, another observation I think Buddha made was about verse 34. I really like is that this is a surah where Luqman talks to his son, and he's giving advice to his son most of the surah, and in the end, it says that you shall, in verse 33, it says, O people, you shall reverence your Lord and fear a day when a father cannot help his own child, not a child can help his father. Certainly God's promise is the truth, therefore do not be distracted by this life. Do not be distracted from God by mere illusions. So, in this world, a father can help his child by giving them the right advice, but in the hereafter, obviously, nobody can help anyone, because if they didn't, follow the guidance in this world, obviously, then they're done. So, mashallah. I'm not sure if it was mentioned earlier, so I thought.
Like how God says, we never annihilate any community before sending a warner. And if 19 serves as or of course, Messenger of the Covenant also said, he also served as a warner as well. He talked about the smoke, and if COVID-19 is a warning, then smoke is not too far. God says it's like one verse says it is a great miracle, indeed a great miracle, a warning to human race. It's huge, This is, I tell you one thing, the world order is gonna change after this quite a bit. The viewers, I see the worst of the worst is coming out of people too, and the good is coming out of people too. Like it also is a test at the same time, because God says, we'll test you through fear, hunger, loss of crops and lives. All this is a huge test on humanity. Like, are they gonna be, afraid or despondent or return to God or not? So let's see how people come out of this. And
yeah, and the scary part is that when people start imploring and God saves them, and they go back to their previous habits, and that's the critical issue. You have to steadfastly persevere. Same. Yeah. When the danger is gone, and then okay, let's go back. Yeah, you're right. This is something, it's going to change the whole world in a major way. This is not something small, I guess.
Masha, I like the part where it says, no soul knows what will happen to it tomorrow, and no one knows in which land he or she will die. God is omniscient, cognizant. The thing is, if
Yeah.
you know,
My cousin, she traveled to Pakistan. When she got her travel arrangement through me, so she goes every year, for a month, 6 weeks to her parents, and so she got the ticket, and original ticket, she was supposed to come back by 16th of March. And then a few days later, she said, no, I want to change my ticket. There is a wedding coming up a week later. I want to attend that. So she spent another $400 to change that ticket to 26th of March. Today, they announced no more flights going out.
Whoa.
So it's like how God is controlling. She had to spend. No, she's begging to come back early. She was. Even a few days ago, she contacted me. I couldn't find a ticket for her.
Oh.
You know how we have with her own hands, with extra money she paid to forward it, move it forward. And my brother, he was in Pakistan for his son's nikah. He flew back on yesterday morning, 6 a.m. Few hours later, all flights, all airports were shut down. That's so weird. Like, he's surviving by little bit. Anyways, Masha Allah, there's a lot of signs with him of 19 as well. So crazy.
Is he submitter? Is this another drug?
We're still on YouTube, by the way.
Okay, yeah. I didn't say his name. I know. No, not really. But believes in Quran alone, yeah. Thanks for reminding. Sometimes we do forget we're on YouTube. Yeah. How events are unfolding. Like, minute by minute is new something. Yeah, like how the advisories are changing by the minute. The financial losses, I don't know when this society will recover from that. That's why I don't think everything will be the same anymore. Sales of houses and gas and who knows how many people will lose jobs.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think we just have to remember that we have to, whatever going on around the world, as long as you are with God, you are going to be protected by His divine power. I mean, there's Psalms 91, I think, is a really good reminder for us.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah. It says, I'll read it. It's actually not that long. It says, Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you say, "The Lord is my refuge," and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you, no disaster will come near your tent. For He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. Because He loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call on me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. Masha Allah. So,
Masha Allah, very beautiful words.
yeah, subhanallah.
Yeah, Masha Allah.
They match so much with Quranic words, you know. It's total protection of God.
Yeah. God's
That's
divine
where you can
protection.
tell, yeah, mashallah, what part of Bible hasn't been
Yes.
corrupted.
Yeah.
Because it's
True.
all about, exactly Rashad in his audios described this. He said, when you're in God's kingdom, angels will remove even that stone which is there. You might trip on it, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, we have that, for example, and then you go to the Bible, for example, in the songs of Solomon, songs of songs, and you find nonsense there, you know. So that which part is the truth. I mean, it's very easy to see.
Exactly, easy to detect.
Yeah.
Yeah, mashallah. But for a person who only read the Bible, they believe it all. But for us who has the Quran, that's how we actually know what's the truth and what's not the truth.
Yeah. Mashallah.
Yeah, like John 3:16, huh? This is their favorite verse, but there's so many powerful verses in the Bible. Like Jesus says, I can of myself do absolutely nothing. I just hear and I just judge. My judgment is just that I seek the will of the one who sent me. I mean, it's clearly saying that he cannot do anything. Everything's run by God.
Yeah, exactly. One time I went to a work gathering, a while ago, and there was two people that worked at the same company, and they were missionaries actually, so at one point, like, we got into a religious debate. Like, I think they tried to convert me or something at some point. So that's how it started. I mean, they were preachers, so I think I said something about God, and they were trying to preach. So then we got into a debate, and I don't really know a whole lot from the Bible, but I had the Quran with me, and I had Appendix 22. So I went over some of the verses from the Quran with them, and it drove them crazy. They were speechless, and they're like, "No, that's not what my Bible says." That's the only thing. I was like, "That's the same Bible." But really, I mean, if you go through those verses and then you look at the lies that are in the rest of the Bible, I mean, it's really fascinating that they're, I mean, so contradictory to each other. I mean, you have to think that you would think that Jesus was some kind of you know, like if Jesus was God, like he would really have some serious mental issues. God forbid if, like for example, if he says that I don't do for myself, like I was sent by the one who has the right to send, and him you do not know. I know him because it is from him that I come. He sent me. So who is he talking about? When they say that. So with if they're one and the same. So there's so many verses I went through with them. I was like, how is that possible? They had answer to none of them. It was amazing, and they go preach around the world. Different countries, and so it was a lot of fun actually.
And well, the question is, if there's a father and the son, then who's the mother? There has to be a mother too, right?
Yeah.
In a family.
Yeah.
Who is the mother? You can't call Mary as a mother.
But it's called cognitive dissonance, and it's not only for Christianity, it's almost for all the religion. You try to tell the Muslims that, our book is Quran, and they will quote you Hadith and Sunnah, right? So it's across the board. Anybody who's stuck in this belief, it's across the board. If they hear something over and over again, and if the truth comes to them, they generally disbelieve the truth. I was at a forum this week, and someone's saying, as Muslims, we can avoid the coronavirus, and they put 8 or 9 steps of wudu, yeah, and revert.
Why aren't they going to the masjid then?
And all I said, you know what? Your article is good, but when it comes to the wudu, God only said 4 step. And I cut an article from Masjid Tucson where it says 4 step and no more. And the article talks about why 4 step and no more. And the article also put the verse, or step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And after giving them that article, they still come back and says, but Imam Ali says that between the space of the first and the second, you can do your own thing, and between the space of the second and the third step, you can do your own thing.
Oh my God.
And I said to her, but God give you, A, B, C, D, laws, rules, regulation, rights, and Satan says A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and you're following A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and still, nope. It's nothing's wrong with cleanliness and purity, and then clearly says that our ablution has nothing to do really with hygiene, purity, and cleanliness. It has to do with following the commands of God, and it's a ritual we do before praying. And then we'll also go on to say, think about tayammum. We did the wipe our face and hand. How clean is that? But no matter you give them an explanation, you give them the verse, yeah? And people stuck in disbelief.
And that's what God says, don't be saddened by their disbelief. Let them do it.
Yeah.
I would think that even doing doing the 3 times thing and doing right hand first and left hand, these are also innovation. You can wash your face 1 time, 2 times. It's just when you think it's clean. I mean, if you do it 3 times exact, then that's innovation too, right?
No, you can, if you think it is just 3 times, you can do it 3 times, 1 time, 2 times. It's not an innovation if we are doing it by habit 3 times, that's fine, or 4 times, or 1 time. Whenever, Rashad said, whenever you feel satisfied, if you 1 time is fine, that's fine with you.
Right. No. In traditional Islam, they do it exactly 3 times. For
sure.
them, it's an innovation, right?
Yes, for sure. I saw a video there where traditionals were these days. They were showing in Pakistan. Somebody posted a video, like in a mosque. it wasn't. It's like Tablighi Jamaat Center or something. There's like a.
Cons.
It's like a, you know, where people sit for wudu. Instead of water taps, there were like like a long, little canal kind of a thing of water, and same water everybody was using in their noses, face, inside their mouth, washing their feet in that stream. And it wasn't like a stream running through; it was contained stream. So everybody just doing this wudu in the same water, and even putting water in their mouth and nose and bringing it back and their feet. It's just unbelievable.
Oh yeah, I saw one video like that. Oh my god! And
So
there's a long khalma on top of it, right?
no.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
When you see all of this, you say Alhamdulillah, because when you see how easily it's something that's so easy to understand and people are stuck in disbelief, you look at your life and you're like, Alhamdulillah, that we were able to see.
So if you guys are okay, maybe we could end the broadcast now.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, inshallah. So
Yeah, sure.
So thank you guys for joining us. God willing, our next study will be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time, and God willing, I think it would be my turn. So God willing, we'll see you next time. God bless you guys. Salāmun Alaykum.